Great. So welcome to the March meeting of the Sustainable Economy Task Force. I'm James Poviwa, and I'm the chair of the committee. Thank you, committee members, staff, and any community members who are joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. I am present. Daisy Maldonado.
Present.
Thank you. Patricia Knighton. Don't believe is here at the moment. Glenn Schiffbauer.
Present.
Thank you. Rob Black. Thank you. Cassie Arias.
Present.
Great. Marissa Naranjo.
Present.
Excellent. Jonathan Perry.
Present.
Welcome. Mayani Barudin.
Present.
Welcome. Atza Chavez is excused. JT Willie.
Present.
Excellent. Janine Yazi. I don't believe is here. Joe Little.
Present.
Welcome. Seeing that we have a majority of committee members here today, we will proceed. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda for today?
So moved. Second.
Jonathan.
Great.
Second.
Thank you. So minutes from our February 9th meeting have been posted on NMEDD's website, but may be changed if necessary. They were also sent to committee members before this meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 9th?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Don't be shy, anybody.
Second.
Thank you, Joe. So all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jonathan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to abstain since I was not at for the voting of the minutes. I was not at the meeting, so I prefer not to vote one way or another since I don't know what was said.
Noted. Thank you, Rob. So moving on to our next item, I wanted to give an opportunity to introduce Shawnee Harvey, the New Mexico Economic Development Department's JEDI coordinator, which stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Coordinator. So Shawnee, would you like to address the committee and introduce yourself and tell us about the valuable role that you play at the department?
Sure, thank you, Chairman James. Is it Poviwa? I don't want to say it wrong.
Oh, you got it correct. Thank you.
Cool. Hi, Daisy. Nice to see you. Hi, everyone. Shawnee Harvey, JEDI coordinator for the Economic Development Department. It is a newly created position and newly established office. We did go ahead and get permission from the legislature in February to bring on a permanent position for JEDI program manager. So there is a permanent JEDI office within the Economic Development Department that we're very excited about. So I've been kind of spearheading that. And thank you again to all the committee members for having me on today. I'll just give you like a quick overview of what I do for the department and why I'm here. So as the JEDI coordinator, I work with business owners and entrepreneurs all around the state to kind of connect them to our programs and services. And I'm also here for like accessibility and awareness. So if folks don't know where to start and they're looking for help with their business, I'm a great first person to call. And I also try to show up in the community and be boots on the ground to help people have kind of a face to economic development and offer just support. I think of myself as an advocate and ally, so I can help business owners set meetings with different state agencies, get them pointed in the right direction if they need to talk to a resource office, and kind of take on the heavy lifting so that business owners can get back to business, and I'll turn around and do the research on that project that you're looking to do. If you're looking for trying to start some sort of program, I can kind of get into the back end of stuff and go ahead and take a look so that you can do what you need to do. And I have kind of helped people with contracting, looking at contracting with the state. I've helped folks kind of get oriented on getting into the film industry, helping businesses kind of expand that way and offering their services more than just like maybe out of their brick and mortar space. Kind of just do whatever I can do to go ahead and support our business owners, no matter who they are and where they're at, and just make sure that folks are kind of aware of what we're doing. And also pushing information out, trying to work with like the chambers and different economic development offices and resource partners to make sure that information is getting out statewide to all of our corners so that we're not missing anyone, and making sure that people are aware of what we've got going on in the department and in our other offices as well. So, you know, working with state government isn't always the prettiest and easiest thing to do. So if I can make that easier, and if I can advocate for you as a business owner for your organization, that's why I'm here. I'm trying to bring a little bit of balance to the New Mexico force between government and business owners. So that's why I'm here. And I sign my emails. May the force be with you. And may the force be with you all in the work that you're doing here for the Sustainable Economy Advisory Task Force and Council, because I know you all have a huge project ahead of you. So however I can kind of help brainstorm or help any of the working groups or whatever you all are going to start doing. You know, New Mexico's economy is vibrant and resilient, and also depends on making sure that we've got everyone at the table from all our communities. So thank you all for giving me a little bit of space and allowing me to be with you all today. And James, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Shawnee. Super appreciate your work, and thank you for being with us today. I know I'm looking forward to working with you closely as we continue to do the work of the committee. Are there any questions from committee members for Shawnee? Shawnee, if you would be so kind as to put your contact information into the chat so committee members could have that, that would be excellent. Thank you. So moving on to our next discussion item, which is around the structure of the Sustainable Economy Advisory Committee. An ad hoc working group met and included the following committee members: myself, Atsa Chavez, Maedi Barudin, Daisy Maldonado, Joseph Little, and Glenn Schiffbauer. My apologies to any committee members who I may have missed who had expressed an interest in being part of the ad hoc committee. I assure you though that there's plenty of opportunity to weigh in now and later on the structure of the SEEK. And now we just wanted to give a report back on some recommendations that the ad hoc committee had. I am going to take the lead on it, but for folks who were part of the working group, please chime in if there's anything that you would like to add, or if there's things that I missed. First of all, the working group recommends 4 permanent working groups for the SEEK, and that would include 1, a sustainable and equitable business and workforce development working group; 2, an education and training working group; 3, a community engagement working group; 4, a tribal engagement working group; and finally, a steering committee, which would be made up of the heads of each one of those working groups. Each one of the working groups would be required to meet once a month off of our standing general committee meeting.
James, I'm sorry, could you repeat those groups again?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'll do this and I will put them in the chat so that we can all have them in front of us. One moment. So again, they are a sustainable and equitable business and workforce development working group, an education and training working group, a community engagement working group, a tribal engagement working group, and a steering committee. Are there any thoughts or questions on those working groups before we continue with other recommendations?
I guess I'll start, James. This is Rob Black with the State Chamber. It looks like the first two are really workforce programs. You've got workforce development, and you've got education and training working group. And I'm trying to understand what is the difference in what their focus is going to be.
And so my understanding from our discussion as an ad hoc group was that the first one is more industry and business focused. And the second one is dealing with things like the educational system, the need for coordination across education programs throughout the state, and training programs. So an example of that might be NMSU's work in sustainable economic development, and ensuring that training programs, for instance, with community colleges and other universities are aligned, and that there is also alignment across the state around apprenticeship programs, which may also include labor. But Glenn, I might call on you to describe the first group a little bit as well.
Yeah, thanks, James. And Rob, we did have some discussion about the similarities between workforce development and educational aspect of it, and being more aligned with the business and workforce development sector. I think that the programs that are specifically training someone for a job would fit into, as you know, into the workforce development part of this working group that would be tied to, more closely to any of the industries that we would be focused on, coming from the economic report or the EED report from last fall. The educational portion, I'm not sure who was part of the group that I think maybe delineated that a little better than just the educational portion of these communities and what is happening in these communities that would lead up to the workforce development. And I think that there was a component in there with that, if I'm recalling the meeting correctly. I was at a power outage here in Santa Fe yesterday, so I did miss part of that meeting as well.
Okay, I guess the clarity doesn't seem to be there for me as to why we have those two committees. I absolutely, and I think the report calls out very clearly that we have a misalignment with our higher education programs and the careers we're trying and the sectors we're trying to bring to New Mexico to diversify our economy. So I think where we've got a piece of this that really works to try to engage with employers who are going to be hiring those folks and aligning that with our workforce piece and our higher education piece, whether that's coming out of a CTE program that's working with our trades and ABC or CNM or others, or higher education where we're talking about your 4-year degrees. I think that's really important. But I guess I'm a little confused as to where that would fall, if it's in the first group or the second group, or is it and I would hate to see it as a combination, I think, because you don't want to, I think there just needs to be some clarity there.
Fair enough. Appreciate that feedback, Rob. Do you have a suggestion on how, it might be in the title, right, of the first group, but do you have a suggestion on how to get to clarity and be more succinct about what each working group is doing?
Well, I guess I wasn't part of the group that met, so I would hate to step on folks' toes if they have a strong point of view or a point of view on kind of why there's two. But I guess my thought would be, the education and training working group could be the one that's really trying to align our secondary education systems with our key sectors and our employers. But that leaves us, what is the first working group and what's its intent? And so if I'm missing something with what that group is supposed to do, because what I don't see in here is I see, community engagement, tribal engagement, steering committee, and then the workforce, but I don't see an employer engagement. Like, where are we talking to employers in these sectors? How do we align our education systems if we're not talking to those employers who are the ones who need to hire these people? And so is that what the first group is doing? That's where I guess I'm a little I want to understand what the intent was, so that we're
Sure,
doing
and I
that.
think I missed a point on that first group, and it was to be industry focused. Right, so it is very much more about engaging with industry and business.
So I guess I would suggest that we think about the name of that first working group. And will it be a group that works externally or just internally? So are you trying to go out and engage with employers, or is it just a group that's kind of inwardly focused within the kind of the role of the committee and government? So I guess that's part of what I'm trying to understand the intent. Because if you start off with the title with sustainable and equitable business, what does that mean for when you're talking to companies that you're trying to recruit and bring to New Mexico, or keep in New Mexico, or grow in New Mexico? So I think we have to be thoughtful about the audience. So again, if it's an internal working group, then the audience is us, and that's a different perspective. But if the audience is external and you're trying to bring in input from outside, we need to, I think, be clear on kind of what that looks like.
Fair enough, and I mean, to some degree, I believe it's the work of the committee to do this. And then I'll also remind us all that we are on the part of the Sustainable Economy Task Force. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to name it within a working group. But I might not be quite hearing what you're trying to get at, Rob. So.
Well, I know Glenn's got his hand. I'll quickly just to that. I mean, sustainable means a lot of different things, right? It can be environmentally sustainable. It can be economically sustainable. So it can be a community sustaining approach. So, I guess anybody can interpret it as to what they want. But I think we have to be, I think it's better to be clear about what we're talking about, personally. But, James, your point is well taken. It's in the name of the committee. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I think it's just good to be clear as to what we're talking about.
Great. Patricia, and then Glenn.
Okay, so was there a reason to have 4 only working groups? Because I could see addressing some of Rob's points by calling it a sustainable and equitable business working group, and then a second one that's an employer engagement working group. I do see a distinction on those, and maybe once those groups form and we see a mission statement for that group or a target, it'll become more clear whether we need to break those down or not. So was there a philosophy behind the number of groups, or an intent behind that the committee chose?
So no, I'll answer that. There isn't, there wasn't an intent to keep it to, a certain number, although there aren't that many of us. So we might, in the interest of capacity, keep it to a smaller number of working groups. Glenn?
Yeah, thanks. To Rob's point, I think, and from the discussion yesterday, the way I envision the first group, I think that description is pretty succinct Again, with the idea that it would be a group that is not internal, but is engaging the different industries and different business sectors that we are guided to reach out to. And again, to Rob's point, I think that the second group is, I could see that title being tweaked a little bit, because I'm not exactly sure what that means and where it might overlap. When you put training, to me, that is kind of workforce development, or in the context of that. So I don't feel as comfortable with the knowledge of what that group would do as I do the first one, especially if we define it as a group that is going to be reaching out to different businesses and different industries.
So I think that if there's anybody else also that wants to comment on the education and training working group, if not, I can proceed.
Yeah, so I'd like to comment because I made that suggestion yesterday, and I do think that in terms of like business and workforce and education are actually three different things, because we do have just in terms of education, like what are the programs that are being offered through higher ed, right, is like different than like workforce. I guess the way I see it is like different than workforce development. And so, and I think there could be a crossover, right, where they should be talking to each other. But I think it'd be a really heavy lift for one committee to look at the education piece and then the workforce piece. But also, I mean, if we wanted to combine those as well so that they would overlap, right? And maybe within them, they could have two different like subcommittees where they look at it separately. I think that's a possibility, but I also know that we don't want to get too committee heavy also, just because we also are a small group, right? And so then we're all would have to commit to being on multiple committees and engage in multiple activities.
So another area that we tried to address, the clear fact that there's a lot of synergy or cross issues among the working groups and just the work in general, is to have a steering committee that is, the intent of the steering committee is to have an overarching view of the work that's being done in each one of the committees, and also where it is that the committees need to be working together. So obviously there are some connections between the first committee and the education and training working group. So that's a good example of the need for those two committees to be communicating with each other. The other thing is, we could have gone about this by going industry specific, but we will be, the New Mexico Economic Development Department will be hiring a contractor to support this committee, but also to support the updating of the state's plan. And that plan is industry by industry. So I think the work of this committee is really more about handling other issues like business and industry engagement and community and tribal engagement. These don't have to be set in stone, but because we are, already in March, I think it's important for us to set up these working groups, see how they're going, and if we need to adjust, I think that we can come back and do that. So my suggestion is to the group that we proceed with these working groups and adjust as needed as we move forward in the year. And Rob, you came off mute, so.
Yeah, James, I think I really like, I think that the tribal engagement piece, the community engagement piece, think those are really important as a means to feed back into the main state board. I forgot what it's called. I'm sorry. We're the advisory board to them. And so I think those are really important. The other thing I think is really important, and it's something I used to chair in a past life, the Workforce Investment Board for San Francisco. And one of the things that became very powerful when we were trying to align our education systems, our secondary and training programs with with educators and employers, was to get them in the same room to talk, because there was a disconnect between what educators thought employers wanted and what employers needed. And when they got in the same room, there was all of a sudden a kind of light bulbs that went off of, oh, we could do this and that. So I do think I would think if there's a way to use that first committee in that way, bringing together our, junior colleges, our community colleges, and our training programs with those employers, I think that could be really powerful. And an example of that is, Intel right now is looking to hire about 700 to 800 people. 85% of those are 2-year degrees. They're not 4-year degrees. And so those are, if we can get folks into those jobs, that's a really great thing. But we need to make sure that our educational institutions know what Intel's really looking for. So I think that's, if there's a way to use that first committee to do that sort of thing, I think it could be really powerful.
Excellent. I really appreciate that point. And I think that is exactly what the ad hoc committee had in mind about committees working together, and that there's going to be cross issues that, don't have to be siloed. So that's a great example, I think, Rob. So I'm going to move us along and go into a couple other recommendations that the working group had. Again, the goals of the working group are to ensure that the state's plan is being updated, and then also to, amplify the engagement, the different groups that we're trying to engage throughout the state. And finally, the working group also recommended that the Sustainable Economy Advisory Committee work to adapt equity principles similar to what has been developed for the governor's climate change task force. And I'm happy to share those with the rest of the committee once I get my hands on the approved copy. But those are being implemented in the climate change task force, which is a similar body to our own, and their technical advisory group, which is even more similar to our SEEK committee. And finally, the working group, the ad hoc committee working group has worked with the economic development staff on deliverables for the contractor that NMEDD will be working to hire soon. And Johanna, if you are available, sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I don't know if you might be able to speak to a little bit about what the role of that contractor would be.
Sure, thanks, James. Hi, committee, and apologies, my camera is not working, so it's probably a good thing. I'm reviewing, I think you guys had made some updates referring to the ad hoc committee, but we finally have a draft of the scope of work that we'd be looking at engaging the contractor on. And I think, Patricia, you had brought it up on the last call, referring to work that can be done within the fiscal year that ends June 30th. And then we'd have to have an additional contract starting July 1st. So there is a delineation between those two timeframes. And then as well, if you keep that time or that date in your head, that around October, we should have a solid product and updated plan. So that's what we're shooting for. But trying to think, I could just share, I might put some of this in the chat, but obviously the collection of feedback is important for this contractor to do. So what we heard on our state plan feedback was from numerous groups or individuals talking about their perspective was not necessarily included, or their feedback. So we'll have a fresh round of public engagement and gathering data and feedback on what was missing from the plan. What did we get wrong? What did we get right? What did we miss? So there's a new fresh collection of data and input and feedback, very much relevant to the engagement piece that you all are talking about, making sure that that engagement is equitable and it is inclusive. Previously, we surveyed and interviewed over 100 organizations. We had a public survey, so it'll be something along those lines. Shawnee, Harvey, whom you just met, and I have been discussing roundtables that we can host as an idea, and have been brainstorming some engagement pieces, but that'll be first and foremost. And then with that additional data and updates, the contractor will actually make the changes to the plan. So that will be in a deliverable, as having the actual plan that we can present. There will be a component to help with the administration of the task force, as well as the advisory council. So taking minutes and organizing minutes, or organizing the meetings will be one of the tasks. James, you mentioned the equity piece of having that framework, drawing from the example of the climate change task force. So getting that put together. Let's see, I'm just going down this list that we threw together. We've got the engagement. I think one of the big points too, and I apologize if I'm repeating this because it's been important in my mind, is the ability to coordinate with numerous plans that are already in existence is a big piece of this. And we kind of sort of got it right the first time. And so we have collected some feedback that what is that next step of how we can do that better? How can we present the findings that are already in existence from various other agency plans as well as regional plans? So that collation and the coordination of various economic development plans is a piece of that data collection. Another part of this is maintaining the timeline of this work. And I know, Patricia, I see you nodding, but I know you've brought that up a couple of times, and extremely important. So it'll be great to have a coordinator that can help develop that. As well, there's a metrics and a measuring piece of this. In the plan, there was a metrics component created that's attached to the action plan. And the hope is that this contractor can help us visualize those metrics and can help speak to the metrics of what actions have been taken, what's on the horizon, etc. As well, there's another piece to this of helping to develop the reports and presentations that are going to be needed in the fall, that we can speak to. Here are the updates that have been made. Here's the actions that have been taken. So the assistance in developing those public interfaces will be important. And let's see, I think I'm getting the majority, and feel free to jump in, James, but that's the bulk of this work. And if you think about, we'll have to split that up, how it makes sense into this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, obviously will be more about compiling and getting the reporting in place, and updating the plan. One thing to throw out there too, and I'll be quiet, is we did receive funding from an EDA grant to continue working on our public interface website that we have that's called eddstateplan.com, I think. And the funding that we received, we'll be able to tweak that and improve it. And I'm hopeful that that can be a starting point, but it can be much improved of being a visualization of not only the metrics, but the work that we're doing related to the plan. Sharing data, sharing information that can be user-friendly to our communities and folks interested in the work related to the plan, diversifying the economy, etc. So I hope I'm not missing anything, but here if anyone has questions, and available if you need more detail. Oh, I also want to throw in there too, if you have suggestions for contractors, we're at that point. So please reach out to me or James or Felicia, and we can reach out to them and see if they're interested in submitting a bid for this work.
Patricia?
Yeah, quick question on that, and I may have missed what you said, Johanna, but it sounds like you covered the largest scope of work, but in the near term, would we, this list of maybe recommendations for contractors, is this something that's in the lower dollar amount that you can make an award fairly quickly so we can have access to them and then set the stage for a larger RFP based solution after June?
Yes.
Okay.
The way that our fiscal years are falling regarding the amount of money that we have, we're able to, once we hone in this contract scope of work, we can reach out to contractors immediately, and hoping sooner than later, talking about within the next couple of weeks that we could identify a contractor and start moving forward on this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Johanna, if I could, James, I would encourage you to also make sure that in your scope of work that you're capturing what you've done since the report last fall, not just kind of going forward from here, but you had a pretty successful legislative session. There's a lot of activity that I think, as far as some of the recommendations, some of the different bills that passed, the regulatory reform work, there's a lot in there that I think you would want to capture when you report back to the legislature and to the governor's office the next year. So I'd encourage you to include kind of looking back, to when the report came out as well.
Great point. Thank you, Rob, for bringing that up. Very important. I also would use that point that you brought up to throw it out there that if you all are aware of states that are successfully sharing websites that are using a report card or kind of like a metrics of how they're showing impact or actions related to their plan, if you come across anything that you like that's communicating what you just brought up, Rob, for example, in a good way, feel free to send them over, because the one that I found, and I might have shared it with the group a while ago, but was the state of Hawaii, their work around sustainability. I thought their website does a pretty good job at communicating where they're at regarding certain metrics. So sorry, Rob, I'm just kind of adding on to your point that it made me think of that point, but thanks for that. And I'll make sure that we spell that out in a better way, because I definitely agree with you.
Thanks, Johanna. Appreciate it. A couple other things that I'll add really quick that came from the ad hoc committee's suggestions for deliverables include spelling out how to get beyond the barriers that were identified in the DWS study that is part of the charge of the committee to implement, and ensuring ways to do robust community engagement, including language access. And ensuring that we're also not leaving anybody out, especially Southern New Mexicans. And in the interest of time, I'm going to move us to an action item. And, thank you for the discussion around the recommendations from the ad hoc committee. Also, thanks to the ad hoc committee for working on this. And I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the recommendations from the ad hoc committee.
So moved, Mr. Chair. This is Atsa.
Thank you, Atsa. Can I get a second?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, I'd like to second the motion with the also the option to modify as needed going forward the titles of the working groups.
Thank you. And I forget parliamentary procedure on that, but the motion as modified by Jonathan Perry is to leave it open to modify the groups moving forward. That's the motion, or that's what we're voting on right now. So all in favor, say aye.
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 I,
Thank you. Well, excellent. So now the real hard work will happen, and that's identifying leads for each one of those committees, for each one of those working groups. We will do that. I will organize an offline procedure for us to do that. But if you're really excited about being a working group chair for any one of those groups, please reach out to me directly. But I will also set up a matrix for us to be able to do that, including which working groups committee members would like to be a part of. Thank you. Glenn, you're off mute. Did you have anything?
no, sorry.
Okay. No problem. It's the equivalent of making a little motion, I feel like, over Zoom. Well, thank you all. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to get down to work. And then let us move to our last agenda item for the day, and that is, we've already had a robust conversation about community engagement. So we will move beyond that and entertain community comment. So are there any community members that have joined us today who would like to address the committee?
Yeah, I suppose I should, there are two people from the Western Environmental Law Center on that many of you don't know, so it behooves me to introduce ourselves. I'm Tom Singer, I'm the Senior Policy Advisor, and Rose Rushings is on as well. She's an attorney. James, should I just give and explain why I'm here and what we're interested in for a moment?
Yes, absolutely, please do.
Okay. WELC has been, deeply involved in oil and gas issues and clean energy issues for a long time. My interest here, our interest here is in the linkage between the sustainable development goals of the state and your work to the funding streams. And we've been tracking the appropriations from last session. I can say more about it. I guess I'll save that if there are any questions, but there's quite a bit of funding at EDD, and the State Investment Council just today started talking about what more they could be doing in the renewable energy space, broadly defined. And so, we're just interested in making sure that the dollars flow to a fully diversified, sustainable portfolio and don't get captured by politically powerful interests in the state. I can leave it at that. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Excellent. Any other community members who would like to address the committee? Okay. Then, in the interest of time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jonathan Perry, motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
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 Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate all your work. We'll be in touch. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Hey, James? Hey, James, I think you're on.
Hi, yes.
Hey, Um,
Oh, and I
when-
think we've got Liliana still on for the moment.
and when you,
Sorry, guys.
Oh, no problem.
when you stop recording, can you send, I think you'll have to send us the recording.
Okay, I recorded it to the cloud. That was one of the options, so I hope it worked.
Okay.
And okay, I'm gonna stop recording now.
Okay,